In this class we want to talk about written reports. Now, business reports are usually written documents that present the outcome of some research or investigative activity. A business report, in other words, usually focuses in on some issue, discusses the issue, and offers the findings of some research. The research may be conducted, for example, within the business, offers the findings and makes some recommendations. Now, if we look at the little schema underneath, I'll just put the cursor onto the screen. If we look at this in here for a moment, we have pre-research planning. In other words, we have the identification of some problem. So some problem that needs discussion, it needs solution. So there's pre-research planning. How will it be researched? What's the issue? What are the sources of information? And then the research will take place. The research may be interviewing the workers, or interviewing junior management, or talking to the marketing people about some issue in the marketing department, or whatever. So there will be some business research conducted. And from the research, some data will be captured. It may be in the form of answers to questions in questionnaires, or it may be interviews. If it's a small business, it's normally interviews. Some interviews with people involved and getting their reactions to different scenarios. And then analyzing that information, or that data I should say, analyzing it and making this available in a report and making a business presentation. So there are various steps to be undertaken in the business reports arena. Collect the information, analyze it, present the information on paper, make a good report, and also perhaps present it in front of the clients. The clients may be the heads of department, or the managers responsible, or could be the board of directors, whoever it is. Now, let's look at business reports in a little bit more detail. Reports are usually commissioned by management as a means of helping with decision making. Clearly, the purpose of the report is to solve some problem or to help in some way. Reports are not commissioned just for the fun of it. The reports are aimed at solving some problem or helping make better decisions, let's say. There may be either formal reports or informal. Formal reports are properly written up with aims, objectives, proper subheadings, whereas informal may be a collection of papers and a summary document, document itemizing what's in the papers and what was found, and it's written up in a looser format. They have a structure that highlights the importance of the subject matter. For example, a formal structure for a detailed and important report, and an informal for a quick report on a small matter. The large reports may be team efforts. It's important to have a methodology. Methodology means a method, a good method. It's important to have a methodology as it gives the reports direction, and it gives them focus. And it also gives the reader confidence that the reports were properly done in accordance with the methodology. So it guides the work, and it enables a clear picture to emerge. Now, there are various steps in developing a business report. First of all, prepare a research brief based on some problem or issue that needs managerial attention. So right at the very start, identify the problem and prepare a research brief. How how will this be researched? How will the researchers go about getting information to shed light on the problem? Ensure that the approach to be used is appropriate for the audience. So if it's a small company looking into an issue, let's say associated with production, then it may not justify the use of very advanced statistical methods. The issues might be more simply dealt with. So make sure that the audience can follow what was the result of the report and implement the recommendations of the report in an understandable and easy fashion. Undertake the research in accordance to a research plan. This will set out the timescale, the resources, and ethical approval if it's needed. So a research plan is important. Ethical approval might be needed within businesses as well, particularly if it's research into issues associated with the workers. It would be very unfair to collect information on the workers without the workers' approval, perhaps. It will also have sections to be completed later on such things as the literature review or past research that was conducted in the area, which may have been consulted. A hypothesis, even though it's a business report, it may still be testing some idea. If it's testing an idea, that is a hypothesis. It should have a methodology, it should have a way of going about solving the problem, shedding light on the issue. And it should have analytical techniques. These should be set out. How will the data be analysed? It should have a conclusion, recommendations, a bibliography and appendices, like most reports. Now, admittedly, in the context of a business report, these may not be extensive, but they should get some mention nonetheless. The research should be conducted in a non-biased manner and then analyse the results in an objective way. So even though, again, it's a business report, it might be a small-scale report, it's important that the information is collated and collected in a non-biased manner. Otherwise, the results don't mean anything. The results are distortions and could actually be dangerous for the business. The recommendations based on biased analysis and biased data, recommendations based on those could be dangerous. It could lead to bad decision making and could be ruinous for the business. It's always wise to prepare a draft of the report and seek criticisms and comment. Many people find it unusual to say, well, we should seek criticism. It sounds we're looking for people to criticize us. But in fact, what we're looking for people to criticize the arguments and the points made in the report, to make sure that the points follow directly from the research, from the type of analysis, from the data, and that the whole project is coherent. So get people to read it and see if it reads and if it's logical and it follows. It flows in a continuous pattern and it's logical. Amend the report if it's not. Amend the report and change the way it's presented if there are significant criticisms. Now, the sources of data, or the sources of data, well, secondary sources may be used. These are sources collected for other purposes and perhaps by other people or even elsewhere, maybe data collected by the government. So one source of data would be company reports, records and documentation. Well, if it's a business report, the logical place to start is in the business to see if there are any sources of data there. Also, it may be worth talking to the company personnel particularly people who have long experience in the business. It may be that talking to collaborating companies and agencies would be useful. Usually ones involved somewhere in the supply chain. In other words, companies associated with the company under investigation. Trade and industry organisations are a good source of secondary information. Chambers of Commerce, for example, and trade associations, they normally keep a lot of information, and they have libraries which members may access. And trade journals, papers, electronic databases, and online whatever, online articles, online materials, online data. Usually there's a source of information, secondary information, that comes from many directions, and it's important that the researcher is aware of where the secondary sources are and how to tap into them. Of course, there's also primary sources of information. This is where the company, let's say, if it's a company report, the company collects the data first-hand from respondents. The company conducts its own research. And these may use surveys, questionnaires and interviews. It depends on which one is appropriate and what the size of the sample should be and what exactly are the data requirements. Or it may have focus groups where it invites people into a room and asks them their opinions, and there's a facilitator who will probe issues with the people in the room and trying to get responses, which will shed light again on the issue. It could be observations where simply the researcher makes observations, stands to one side and makes observations and concludes from the observations. Or it could be participant observation, where the researcher becomes involved in the business itself. If the researcher does become involved in the business, then care must be taken so as not to distort the information. The presence of someone doing research in the workplace may distort behaviour in the workplace. It could be done by experimentation, although experimentation is normally conducted in the natural sciences, like physics and chemistry and so on. But sometimes in business it may be possible to conduct experiments, particularly in areas like engineering, to test if something is possible. Is a certain process possible? Set up an experiment, set up the machinery and test it. Now, the report presentation, well, use an electronic form of presentation if possible, because some of them are very good for presentation purposes. They're very sophisticated. The problem with electronic forms of presentation is sometimes they can be too distracting. So it's important to use them in moderation. Don't make the presentation software the centerpiece of the presentation. It's the information that you need to get across, not the presentation tools. So use electronic forms of presentation, but tone them down. They are just means of delivering the message. Keep the presentation short and straightforward. Don't digress and don't introduce anecdotal material or discuss other things. Just keep it to the point. It's a business presentation, and therefore it should be business-like. Distribute written summaries at the end of the presentation so that the people present have something to carry away with them. They may have missed points as you've gone along, or misinterpreted points as you've gone along, and written summaries at the end are a good way of winning over the audience. They feel that they were catered for, they were looked after. So they've got something from the source which summarized the meeting. Invite questions and requests for clarification. It's a good thing to have questions. So the presenter should be completely fluent with the area and know what he or she is talking about and be prepared to take questions and give reasonable answers, intelligible answers. That's important. And avoid slang and present the material in a logical order. Avoid colloquialisms and slang terms. Just make it as clear as possible, make it to the point, and make sure all the points follow one from the other in logical fashion. Now that's all I'm going to say about written reports, and in particular business reports. So I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.